Hachette Audio presents The Prodigal Son, written by Kimberla Lawson Roby, read by Peter J. Fernandez.
To the most loving and caring mom ever, Arletha Tennant Stapleton. After all these years, I still miss you every single day of my life, but I do know that you are with me eternally. Thank you for everything, Mom. I will love you always. Chapter 1. Matthew stared at his wife of 10 months and shook his head. Racquel, who was sitting at the opposite end of the chocolate-brown leather sofa, looked over at him and frowned. What? Matthew shook his head again. This time, his eyes screamed disappointment. But all Racquel did was purse her lips and turn her attention back to the flat-screen television. It was a noticeably warm Friday evening in May, and though Matthew was a bit tired from his long day at work, he would have loved nothing more than for the two of them to be out somewhere enjoying each other. Maybe have a nice dinner and catch whatever new movie was playing. But, as usual, Racquel was contentedly curled up, like an unconcerned couch potato, doing what she did best, watching some awful, ungodly reality show. Matthew leaned his head back on the sofa and closed his eyes. Not in his wildest imagination, not in 1,000 lifetimes, would he have ever pictured himself being so miserable. But miserable he was, and worse, he now realized that getting married at the young age of 19 had been a horrible mistake. He'd now turned 20, but he could kick himself for giving up a full 4-year academic scholarship to Harvard University, something he'd worked very hard for his entire childhood. And now this was all he had to show for it? This. A tiny 2-bedroom apartment, a $12 an hour job at a bank, and no love life of any kind to speak of? Not since the day he'd been born had he ever had to struggle financially. Even before he'd met his father, which hadn't happened until he was 7 years old, Matthew had lived a pretty good life because his maternal grandparents had always seen to it. Then, of course, when his mom had married his dad, he hadn't gone without anything. He must have been crazy in love or crazy out of his mind to think he was doing the right thing by getting married. He also couldn't deny how right his mother had been every time she'd warned him about having unprotected sex. He still hadn't spoken to either of his parents in more than a year. Not even when they'd mailed him a $10,000 check and he'd torn it up. But his mom had been correct.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?